I never thought telling a stranger his painting was fake would end with me sharing his bed for 2 weeks. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to the night that changed everything. The night I decided to open my mouth when I should have stayed quiet. It was a Friday in late September, and I was working my third job of the day. My feet were screaming inside cheap heels that didn't fit right, and I had been carrying champagne trays for 4 straight hours at this charity auction in Manhattan, the kind of event where a single glass costs more than my weekly groceries. I was exhausted. My thesis defense was in 9 days. I had 2 restoration projects due, and my mother kept calling, asking why I hadn't visited in 3 weeks. The truth? I was working 70-hour weeks just to afford tuition. Art restoration doesn't pay for itself, and my parents had already sacrificed everything to get me this far. But none of that mattered when I saw the painting. It was hanging center stage under museum-quality lighting, a supposed Caravaggio worth $200 million. People were gathered around it like it was the Mona Lisa. And standing directly in front of it, studying every detail with dark eyes that missed nothing, was him. Orion Salvatierra. I'd seen his face in newspapers. Everyone in the city knew who he was, even if they pretended not to. The kind of man mothers warn their daughters about, the kind who wears $1,000 suits and has blood on his hands, hidden under Italian leather gloves. He was beautiful in a dangerous way. Sharp jaw, olive skin, hair just long enough to be rebellious. But it was his eyes that caught me. Intelligent, calculating, like he was always 3 steps ahead of everyone in the room. If I'd been smart, I would have walked past with my champagne tray and kept my art degree to myself. But my grandmother used to say my mouth moved faster than my brain, and she was right, because the painting was fake. I could see it from 15 feet away. The pigments were wrong. Synthetic compounds that didn't exist in the 1600s. Prussian blue in shadows where it shouldn't be. Titanium white in highlights that should have been lead-based. My professor would have failed me for missing details this obvious. Someone was about to sell this man a $200 million forgery, and for reasons I still don't understand, I couldn't let it happen. My hands started shaking as I walked toward him. Every logical part of my brain screamed to turn around. This wasn't my business. This wasn't my world. I was a broke grad student in a borrowed uniform, and he was him. But I kept moving. He didn't notice me approach. His attention was completely absorbed by the painting, one hand raised like he wanted to touch the canvas but wouldn't dare. There was something almost reverent in his expression, and for half a second, I wondered if I was wrong, if maybe I'd misread the pigment analysis. Then I got closer and saw the brushwork. Definitely wrong. I leaned in next to him, my heart hammering so hard I was sure he could hear it, and whispered in Neapolitan, the dialect my grandmother taught me, the one nobody speaks in America. That is fake. The pigments are wrong for the period. He went completely still. For 3 full seconds, he didn't move, didn't breathe, didn't even blink. Then his head turned slowly toward me, and those dark eyes locked onto mine with an intensity that made my breath catch. "How do you know?" he asked. His Neapolitan was perfect, native. Not the kind you learn from apps or college courses, I replied, my voice barely steady. I'm an art restorer. Prussian blue didn't exist in the 1600s. Something shifted in his expression. Not quite a smile, but close. Respect, maybe. Or curiosity. He opened his mouth to respond, but then his gaze shifted past me, and his entire body language changed. The warmth vanished, his jaw clenched, his hand moved to his side, where I realized, with cold shock, there was probably a gun hidden under that perfect suit jacket. "Don't move," he said quietly in English, "and don't look behind you." But I did. I couldn't help it. 3 men in dark suits were walking toward us through the crowd. Not walking, prowling. Their eyes were fixed on me, and one of them was holding up his phone with my face on the screen. My stomach dropped. They'd seen me. They knew I'd spotted the forgery. "You have a phone?" Orion asked, his voice still calm but urgent. "Yes, in my—" "Did you take pictures?" God, I had. I'd photographed the painting 30 minutes ago for my restoration class group chat, zooming in on the pigment inconsistencies to show my professor later. The men were getting closer. One of them reached into his jacket. "Come with me," Orion said. "Right now." "I don't even know you. You just cost some very dangerous people $200 million. His hand closed around my wrist, firm but not painful. "So, unless you want to find out what they do to people who interfere with their business, you'll walk with me toward the kitchen, slowly, like we're having a conversation." My mouth went dry. This couldn't be happening. I was supposed to go home tonight, finish my thesis chapter, call my mother, and fall asleep to apartment sirens like always. But his grip on my wrist was real. The men moving through the crowd were real, and the cold fear settling into my bones was definitely real. We were halfway to the kitchen door when I heard the first scream. Then the gunshots started. Glass exploded above our heads. Champagne flutes, crystal chandeliers, the protective case around the fake Caravaggio. People hit the floor. Women screamed. Men shouted. Somewhere, an alarm started blaring. Orion pulled me forward, his body angled to shield mine from the chaos behind us. We burst through the kitchen door into fluorescent brightness and stainless steel, past shocked caterers in line, cooks frozen mid-prep. "Service exit," he barked at a chef. "Where?" The man pointed with a shaking hand. We ran, and I realized with absolute certainty that nothing would ever be the same again. What I didn't know was that saving his life meant losing my own freedom. The service exit opened into an alley that smelled like garbage and rain. The cold October air hit my face like a slap, and I could still hear gunshots echoing from inside the building. Orion's hand never left my wrist as he pulled me toward a black car idling at the end of the alley. The driver didn't ask questions. The second we were inside, he hit the gas. "Stay down," Orion commanded, pushing my head below the window line as we tore out of the alley onto the street. I heard sirens, police, ambulances, maybe both, but they were behind us, getting farther away with every second. My whole body was shaking. I'd never heard real gunshots before. Movies don't prepare you for how loud they are, how they make your chest vibrate, how the smell of gunpowder burns your nose. Who were those men? My voice came out high and thin, not like me at all. "Constantine's people," Orion said, pulling out his phone and typing rapidly. "The man selling the painting. Why would they shoot? Because you exposed their con." He glanced at me, and there was something almost apologetic in his eyes. "They spent 6 months setting this up. Fake provenance, false authentication documents, bribed experts. You destroyed it all with one sentence." Oh God, oh God, oh God, oh God. "I was just trying to help. I know." He went back to his phone, now making calls in rapid Italian. I caught words like compromised and elimination and immediate extraction. None of them made me feel better. The driver took a sharp turn that threw me against the door. We were heading uptown, weaving through traffic like we were in a chase movie. My mind couldn't process it. 4 hours ago, I was worried about my thesis deadline. "Where are you taking me?" I asked. "Somewhere safe." "I need to go home. My roommate will—" "Your roommate will be fine." His voice was calm but firm. "You won't be. Constantine's network has your photo. By now, they have your name, your address, your student ID, probably your class schedule. They'll have people at your apartment within an hour." The shaking got worse. I wrapped my arms around myself, suddenly freezing despite the car's heat. This is insane. I'm nobody. I'm just a student. You're a witness who can prove fraud and attempted murder. That makes you a liability. He finished another call and looked at me directly. I'm sorry you got pulled into this, but right now, keeping you alive means keeping you with me. For how long? He hesitated. That hesitation told me everything. 2 weeks, maybe 3. Until my people can dismantle Constantine's operation and neutralize the threat. 2 weeks. My thesis defense was in 9 days. I had a restoration, project due Monday. My parents expected me for Sunday dinner. My entire life was in the city. I can't just disappear for 3 weeks. I have school. I have work. You'll have a funeral if you go back. His tone wasn't cruel, just factual. These people don't give second chances. I wanted to argue. I wanted to demand he take me to the police, to the FBI, to anyone who could actually protect me legally. But something in his expression stopped me. He wasn't scared, but he was serious. We drove for another 40 minutes in tense silence. The city gradually disappeared, replaced by suburbs, then trees, then winding mountain roads that made my stomach turn. The driver never spoke. Orion made 7 more calls, each one shorter and more clipped than the last. I stared out the window and tried not to cry. My phone was still in my purse. I pulled it out and saw 37 missed calls. My roommate, my mother. Unknown numbers that made my skin crawl. Don't answer those, Orion said immediately. My mom is going to think I'm dead. Better than actually being dead. He reached over and gently took the phone from my hands. I'll have someone contact her tomorrow. Tell her you're safe but can't communicate for a few days. Family emergency. She'll understand. You don't know my mother. I know mine would rather have me alive and silent than dead and honest. There was a weight to those words, a history I didn't understand yet. The car finally stopped in front of a cabin nestled deep in the woods. It was small, rustic, the kind of place people rent for romantic getaways or weekend retreats. Under different circumstances, it might have been charming. Now it just looked isolated. Where are we? I asked. Catskills, 2 hours from the city. He opened his door and stepped out, scanning the tree line like he expected threats to emerge from the shadows. Only 3 people know about this location. It's safe. I didn't move. Couldn't move. He leaned back into the car, and his expression softened slightly. I know you're scared. I know this isn't fair, but I give you my word, I will keep you alive, and the second it's safe, you can go back to your life. What if I just run? I challenged. Right now, into the woods. You can't stop me. No, he agreed. But Constantine's people will find you within 24 hours, and what they'll do to you... He stopped, jaw tight. Please don't make me describe it. The worst part was, I believed him. I got out of the car on shaking legs. The driver handed Orion a black duffel bag, exchanged a few quiet words in Italian, and drove away. The sound of the engine faded, replaced by wind in the trees and my own panicked heartbeat. Orion walked to the cabin door and unlocked it with a key from under a fake rock. Of course. A safe house with a hidden key. My life had become a crime thriller, and I didn't even get to audition for the part. He pushed the door open and stepped inside, turning on lights as he went. I followed slowly, taking in the space. 1 main room with a kitchenette and living area, 1 bedroom visible through a doorway, rustic furniture, fireplace, windows with heavy curtains, and then I saw it. 1 bedroom, 1 bed. You can't be serious, I whispered. He followed my gaze and understanding crossed his face. I'll take the couch. For 2 weeks? I've slept in worse places. I wanted to argue more. I wanted to demand answers, explanations, some kind of guarantee this nightmare would end. But exhaustion hit me like a wave. My body finally caught up with my brain, and everything that had happened in the past 2 hours crashed down at once. I sank onto the edge of the couch, still wearing my stupid waitress uniform, and put my head in my hands. I was supposed to defend my thesis in 9 days, I said quietly. I know. My grandmother's recipe book is in my apartment. It's the only thing I have left of her. I'll have someone retrieve it. This morning, my biggest problem was affording groceries. He didn't respond to that, just moved to the kitchen and started making coffee like we hadn't just fled a crime scene. And I sat there, in a strange cabin in the middle of nowhere, with a man I'd known for less than 3 hours, and realized my life had completely shattered. What I didn't know yet was that it was about to become something entirely different, something I never saw coming. And if you want to see how sharing a cabin with Orion for 2 weeks changed everything between us, including what happened the night the power went out, hit that subscribe button. Trust me, you don't want to miss what comes next. Day 3 was when I stopped seeing him as my captor and started seeing him as just him. The first night was hell. I locked myself in the bedroom while he took the couch like he promised. I didn't sleep, just stared at the ceiling and listened to every creak of the floorboards, every rustle of wind outside, convinced Constantine's men would burst through the door any second. Morning came gray and cold. I found Orion already awake, making breakfast in the tiny kitchen, the smell of coffee and something else, something that made my chest tight with unexpected emotion. Is that... I stopped in the doorway. Biscotti, he said without turning around. My grandmother's recipe, the pastry she made every Sunday morning. I hadn't tasted it since she died 2 years ago. How did you know? You mentioned your grandmother taught you Neapolitan. I took a guess. He plated 2 pastries and turned to face me. They won't be as good as hers, but I tried. I should have been suspicious. I should have kept my walls up, but homesickness hit me so hard I almost cried. I sat at the small table and took a bite. It was perfect. Exactly like I remembered. Where did you learn to make these? My voice came out softer than I intended. My father. He poured coffee, espresso, strong enough to strip paint. He was from Naples originally, used to make them every Sunday before. He stopped. Before he was murdered. He didn't say it, but I heard it anyway. We ate in silence, but it felt different from yesterday's tension. Less hostile, more sad, like we were both mourning things we'd lost. I'm sorry, I said finally, about getting you involved in that mess. If I'd just kept my mouth shut, then I'd be $200 million poorer, and none the wiser. He met my eyes. You saved me from a lot worse than a few weeks in hiding. Still, your life is disrupted because of me. My life is disrupted because I deal with criminals. A hint of a smile. You're just the most interesting disruption I've had in years. Something warm flickered in my chest. Dangerous. Unwanted. I looked away. The next few days developed a strange rhythm. Morning coffee, sparse conversation, long silences where we orbited each other in the small space like planets trying not to collide. He worked on his laptop, encrypted communications, I assumed. I tried to work on my thesis from memory, sketching restoration techniques on paper he'd found in a drawer. I caught him watching me sometimes. Not creepy watching, curious watching, like I was a puzzle he couldn't solve. On day 4, I found him at the upright piano in the corner. I hadn't even noticed it before. His hands moved across the keys with unexpected grace, playing something melancholy and Italian that I didn't recognize. I didn't know mobsters played Chopin. I said from the doorway, his hands stilled. I didn't know art students used humor as a defense mechanism. Touché. He patted the bench beside him. Against my better judgment, I sat. My mother's favorite, he said, gesturing to the sheet music. She made me learn piano before she'd let me learn other things. Other things meaning guns, I assumed, violence, the family business. Do you miss it? I asked. The before, when things were simpler. Every day. His fingers returned to the keys, playing softer now. Do you? I thought about my tiny apartment, my mountains of student debt, my exhausting job schedule. Honestly, I'm not sure my before was worth missing. I was drowning and calling it swimming. He looked at me then, really looked, and something passed between us. Recognition, maybe, of two people pretending to be fine when they were both barely holding on. Your grandmother, he said. Tell me about her. So I did. I told him about Sunday dinners, about learning Neapolitan in her kitchen while she rolled dough, about how she came to America with nothing and built something beautiful anyway. I told him about watching her hands restore old family photographs, with the same care she used for pastries, how that's why I chose art restoration, to preserve beautiful things the way she taught me. He listened without interrupting, and when I finished, he told me about his father, how he'd tried to go, legitimate, how he'd been murdered for it, how Orion inherited an empire at 19 and spent 15 years trying to honor his father's dream without dying in the process. I'm tired, he admitted quietly, of violence, of always looking over my shoulder, of being the monster in other people's stories. You don't seem like a monster to me. You've known me for 4 days in a cabin. You haven't seen what I'm capable of. Maybe. But I've seen you make my grandmother's recipe from memory. I've heard you play your mother's favorite song. Monsters don't do that. His jaw tightened. You're naive. Maybe. Or maybe you're so busy being what everyone expects that you forgot you're human too. The air between us felt charged, electric. He was close enough that I could smell his cologne, something woodsy and expensive that didn't match the rustic cabin. You should go to bed, he said, voice rough. It's late. But neither of us moved. Have you ever felt that pull towards someone you know you shouldn't want? That magnetic inevitability that scares you more than any threat ever could? That's where I was, sitting inches from a man whose world was violence and blood, feeling safer than I had in years. I stood up abruptly. You're right. Good night. I made it 3 steps before he spoke again. Emiliana. My name and his voice did something to me. Made my name sound like something precious instead of just syllables on official documents. Yeah? Thank you for the pastries comment and for seeing me as human. I didn't trust myself to respond, just nodded and went to the bedroom, closing the door between us. But I could still hear the piano through the walls, melancholy and beautiful and lonely. Day 6 brought rain, heavy, persistent rain that turned the world gray and cold. The temperature dropped. The cabin's heating struggled to keep up. I found Orion trying to coax the fireplace to life, cursing in Italian when the kindling wouldn't catch. You need smaller pieces, I said, kneeling beside him, and you're smothering it. Fire needs to breathe. And you're an expert on fire now, art restorer? My grandmother had a wood stove. I know how to build a fire that actually works. I rearranged his setup. Smaller kindling at the base, larger logs positioned to allow airflow. Within 5 minutes, flames were crackling steadily. Show off, he muttered. Maybe you're just bad at this. That earned me a genuine laugh. The first one I'd heard from him. It transformed his face completely, erasing the hard edges and revealing something younger underneath, something that might have existed before violence became his inheritance. The power went out around midnight. I woke to complete darkness and cold seeping through the walls. My breath came out in visible puffs. I wrapped the blanket tighter, but it wasn't enough. The temperature was still dropping. A knock on the bedroom door. "Emiliana?" Orion's voice, careful. "The heat's out. Main line must be down from the storm. How long until it's fixed? Could be hours. Could be morning." A pause. "It's going to get colder. Possibly below freezing." I knew where this was going. Every survival instinct my grandmother ever taught me knew where this was going. "We'll freeze separately if we stay in different rooms," he continued. "Shared body heat is—" "I know." I cut him off before he could finish the embarrassing explanation. "Just give me a minute." I sat in the dark, weighing my options. Pride versus survival. Independence versus practical reality. The cold made the decision for me. I opened the door. He was standing there with extra blankets, his expression carefully neutral. "This doesn't mean anything," I said. "Agreed." "You stay on your side?" "Absolutely." We arranged ourselves with military precision, him on one side, me on the other, layers of blankets between us like a fabric wall. The bed wasn't huge, but it was enough to maintain distance, for about 20 minutes. Then the cold became unbearable. My teeth were chattering. My fingers felt numb. "Emiliana," his voice in the darkness. "You're shaking." "I'm fine." "You're freezing. Stop being stubborn." Before I could argue, he moved closer and wrapped his arm around me, pulling my back against his chest. His body heat was immediate and overwhelming and exactly what I needed. "This is just survival," he murmured against my hair. "Nothing more." "Right. Survival." But the way his heartbeat matched mine didn't feel like survival. It felt like something far more dangerous. The night I fell asleep in his arms was the night everything changed. And not just between us. I woke up tangled around him, my head on his chest, his arm around my waist, our legs intertwined like we'd been sleeping together for years instead of hours. Early morning light filtered through the curtains, and the storm had passed. I should have moved, should have put distance between us immediately. But his heartbeat was steady under my ear, and he was still asleep, and for just a moment I let myself feel safe. Really, truly safe. Not the paranoid safety of locked doors and escape routes, but the kind that comes from being held by someone who'd proven he'd protect you even when he didn't have to. His eyes opened. We stared at each other for 3 long seconds. "The power's back," I whispered. "Yeah." Neither of us moved. "We should probably." But his hand was tracing slow circles on my back, and I was playing with the collar of his shirt, and the air felt thick with all the things we weren't saying. The kiss happened so naturally I couldn't say who moved first. 1 second we were staring, the next his mouth was on mine, hungry and desperate and absolutely right. He kissed like he did everything else, with complete focus, like I was the only thing that mattered in the entire world. I kissed him back like I was drowning and he was air. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, reality crashed back in. "That was," I started. "A mistake," he finished. "Right, obviously." But his thumb was stroking my cheek, and I was still pressed against him, and neither of us was pulling away. "You're 25, he said quietly. "You're in grad school. You have your whole life ahead of you." "So?" "So I'm 37. I run a criminal empire. I've done things that would make you run if you knew the details." "I'm not running." "You should be." "Well, I'm not great at doing what I should." I met his eyes. Are you going to tell me you don't feel this? His jaw clenched. What I feel doesn't matter. You deserve better than someone like me. Shouldn't I decide what I deserve? Before he could answer, his phone buzzed. He pulled away reluctantly, checking the screen. Whatever he saw made his entire expression darken. Get dressed, he said, suddenly all business. My second is coming. There's news. 30 minutes later, we sat at the kitchen table across from a man Orion introduced as Dante, his enforcer and oldest friend. Dante looked like he'd stepped out of a gangster movie. Scarred knuckles, cold eyes, the kind of presence that made you step back without thinking. He barely glanced at me before speaking rapid Italian to Orion. I caught enough words to understand they were talking about Constantine, about the investigation, about how close they were to dismantling his operation. Then Dante said something that made my blood run cold. Abbiamo identificato Constantine. Nome completo. Constantine Russo. Russo. My mother's maiden name. Orion's eyes snapped to me. Your mother's family name, what is it? Russo. My voice came out strangled. But it's a common name. It doesn't mean... Where is her family from? Originally? Naples. But they immigrated in the 80s. Dante interrupted in English, his accent thick. Constantine Russo, age 53, originally from Naples, disowned by family in 1985 for criminal activity. Has one surviving sibling, a sister, married named Conti. The room tilted. Conti. My mother's married name. No. The word came out as a whisper. That's not possible. But Orion was already pulling up photos on Dante's tablet, security footage from the auction, images of Constantine from various surveillance operations. And there, in grainy black and white, was a face I'd seen before. In old photo albums my mother kept hidden in the attic. In stories she'd told about her estranged brother who went down a bad path. The brother she'd spent 30 years pretending didn't exist. Oh God. I pressed my hands to my mouth. He's my uncle. Constantine is my uncle. The silence was deafening. Tell me everything you know about him, Orion said quietly. Everything your mother ever told you. So I did. I told them about the family legend, how Constantine had been brilliant but volatile, how he'd gotten involved with the wrong people, how he'd stolen money from their father and disappeared into the criminal underworld, how my mother had changed her name when she married my father, desperate to distance herself from her brother's reputation. She said he was obsessed with betrayal, I remembered, that he could never trust anyone, always thought people were trying to cheat him or steal from him. Paranoid personality type, Dante observed. Classic criminal psychology. She also said, I swallowed hard. She said he swore revenge on the family for disowning him, that he blamed them for everything that went wrong in his life. Orion and Dante exchanged a look. What? I demanded. What does that mean? It means this was personal, Orion said. The auction, the forgery, all of it. He wasn't just trying to con me out of money. He was trying to destroy me specifically. But why? Because 5 years ago, I was the one who exposed his trafficking operation in Naples, got half his network arrested. He lost millions and barely escaped prosecution. Orion's expression was grim. He's been planning revenge ever since. The pieces clicked into place with horrible clarity. And I ruined it, I whispered. His niece destroyed his perfect plan. Which is why he wants you dead even more than he wants me dead, Dante added bluntly. Family betrayal is the worst kind in his mind. I felt sick. My own blood relative wanted me murdered. A man who shared my grandmother's DNA, who'd eaten at the same Sunday dinners, who'd once been my mother's beloved older brother. There's more, Dante said, looking uncomfortable. He knows who you are now. has known since the first night. He's been sending messages. What kind of messages? Orion's jaw was so tight I thought it might crack. Death threats, detailed ones, against you, your mother, your entire family. The room spun. I gripped the edge of the table. He won't stop, Orion continued. Not until you're dead or he's neutralized. And now that he knows you're with me. He stopped. He thinks you're working with me. That the exposure was planned. That we orchestrated this together. That's insane. That's paranoia. Dante stood. I'll give you 2 time to process. But boss, we need to decide on next steps, soon. He left, closing the cabin door behind him. I sat frozen, trying to absorb everything. My uncle. The man trying to kill us was my mother's brother. The family connection I'd been so proud of, Neapolitan heritage, strong immigrant roots, was also connected to a monster who dealt in death and forgery. I'm sorry. Orion's voice broke through my spiral. I'm so sorry you're connected to this. It's not your fault. Isn't it? If I'd never gone to that auction, then you'd be broke and he'd still be a criminal. I looked at him. This isn't on you. It's on him. On his choices. But my hands were shaking. Because I understood now. This wasn't just about surviving 2 weeks until things blew over. This was about my family. My blood. The same genes that produced my beloved grandmother also produced a man who'd kill his own niece without hesitation. What do we do? I asked. Orion was quiet for a long moment. Then, we fight back. But I need to know, can you handle information about your uncle? Real information, the kind that will make you see him as the enemy, not family? Could I? Could I separate the blood connection from the moral reality? I thought about my mother. How she'd worked 3 jobs to send me to college. How she'd sacrificed everything so I could restore art instead of clean houses like she did. How she'd spent 30 years protecting me from ever knowing her brother's name. He threatened my mother, I said quietly. That makes him my enemy, family or not. Something like respect flickered in Orion's eyes. Then we plan, together. He reached across the table and took my hand, the same hand that had held me through the storm last night. I won't let him hurt you, he promised, or your family, whatever it takes. I believed him. Maybe I was naive. Maybe I was stupid. But sitting in that cabin with a mafia boss holding my hand while we plotted against my homicidal uncle, I believed him. What I didn't know yet was that believing him would require becoming someone I'd never imagined, someone dangerous enough to fight back. Loving him was dangerous. Saving him would require becoming dangerous myself. The next 2 days were intense. Orion brought in files, thick folders full of surveillance photos, financial records, communication intercepts, everything they had on Constantine's operation. I studied them like I was preparing for the most important exam of my life, because in a way, I was. Pass meant we lived. Fail meant we died. He moves locations every 3 days, I observed, spreading photos across the coffee table. Different hotels, different boroughs, never the same pattern twice. Standard paranoia protocol, Orion confirmed. He was sitting beside me, close enough that our shoulders touched. We hadn't talked about the kiss, hadn't talked about how we kept finding excuses to be near each other. Makes him nearly impossible to track. Unless you know his tells. I pulled out a photo from 2019. Look, when he's planning something big, he goes to churches. My mother said he'd spend hours in confession before any major family event. Said it was his way of maintaining control. Confess the sin before committing it. Dante, who'd been staying at the cabin to help coordinate, leaned forward. There are 47 Catholic churches in his current operating radius. Narrow it to Neapolitan parishes, I said. Churches with Italian services. He'd want to confess in his native language. Orion pulled up a map on his laptop. That's 3 locations. And one of them will have surveillance footage of him in the last week. I guarantee it. They started making calls. Within an hour, we had confirmation. Constantine had been spotted at Santa Maria Maggiore in the Bronx 4 times in 6 days. He's planning something big, I said. Another con, probably. Maybe another hit. On us, Orion agreed. His hand found mine under the table, squeezed. Which means we need to move first. The plan came together over the next 12 hours. It was risky, possibly insane, but it was the only option that didn't involve running forever. We'd feed Constantine false information through one of Orion's contacts, a man on the fringes of both organizations who Constantine thought was loyal to him. Make him think we were hiding at a different location, a warehouse in Brooklyn that Orion's people had been watching. Constantine would send his men. We'd have Interpol waiting, not the FBI, because Constantine had proven he could corrupt federal agents. But Interpol had been tracking his international forgery ring for 2 years. They wanted him badly enough to risk an operation on U.S. soil. And the evidence? I asked. How do we make sure it sticks? You, Orion said simply. Your testimony about the forgery, Dante's documentation of his trafficking operation, financial forensics showing the money trail. He paused. But the key is getting him to confess. On record. He'll never confess to police. No, but he might confess to you. The room went silent. Absolutely not, Dante said immediately. Too dangerous. But I was already thinking it through. He thinks I betrayed him, that I'm working with you to destroy him. Which makes you the perfect bait, Orion said, his expression torn between strategic calculation and obvious concern. If we can get you close enough, wearing a wire, he'll kill her the second he sees her, Dante interrupted. This is suicide. Not if he thinks he's won, I countered. My heart was racing, but my mind was clear. Not if he thinks I'm alone, captured, ready to be punished. Orion's hand tightened on mine. I don't like this. You don't have to like it. You just have to trust me. I looked at him directly. I know him. I know how his mind works. The paranoia, the need for revenge, the obsession with family betrayal. He won't kill me immediately. He'll want to gloat first. Explain why I deserve this. It's what my mother said he did before he stole from their father. Laid out his entire justification before taking the money. And if you're wrong, then I'm dead. But if we do nothing, we're dead anyway. At least this way we're fighting back. The vulnerability hit me then. The reality of what I was proposing. I'd never been in a physical fight. Never held a gun. 2 weeks ago, my biggest fear was failing a thesis defense. Now I was volunteering to be bait for a killer. I'm terrified, I admitted, but I'm more terrified of running forever, of looking over my shoulder for the rest of my life, of him hurting my mother to punish me. Orion pulled me closer, his forehead resting against mine. If we do this, if I let you do this, you follow every instruction exactly. You wear a wire. You stay in the planned location where we can extract you in under 3 minutes. And the second things go wrong, you run. Promise me. I promise. Say it again. I promise I'll run if things go wrong. He kissed me then. Deep and desperate and full of everything we hadn't said out loud. When we broke apart, Dante was diplomatically studying the ceiling. If you two are done, he said dryly, we have a homicidal crime lord to catch. The next 48 hours were preparation. They taught me how to wear a wire without it being obvious, how to position myself for optimal sound pickup, what to say to keep Constantine talking, where the exits were, how to recognize the extraction signal. They also taught me self-defense basics, not enough to fight off trained killers, but enough to buy myself seconds if I needed them. "You're a natural," Dante said, after I successfully executed a move that would have broken his nose if I'd followed through. "Ever considered a career change?" "I'll stick with art restoration, thanks." But there was something empowering about it, about learning I was capable of more than I'd thought, that fear and strength could coexist. Late at night, after Dante had gone to sleep in the second bedroom, Orion and I sat by the fireplace, not talking, just existing together. "After this is over," he said quietly, "what do you want?" My thesis defense would be nice. Graduating on time, seeing my mother without worrying she'll be killed. And after that, I turned to look at him. His face was cast in firelight, all sharp angles and hidden softness. Honestly, I don't know. 3 weeks ago, I had my entire life planned out. Now everything's different. Is that bad? I'm not sure yet. I leaned my head on his shoulder. "Ask me again when we're not actively trying not to die." He wrapped his arm around me. "For what it's worth, you've changed things for me too." "Yeah? I've spent 15 years trying to be what my father wanted, building an empire he'd be proud of, never letting anyone close enough to matter." His voice dropped. "Then you whispered about fake pigments, and suddenly I couldn't remember why being alone seemed safer than being with someone who sees me." My throat tightened. That's the most romantic thing anyone's ever said to me while planning to use me as bait. He laughed, that genuine laugh I'd only heard a few times. "We're deeply dysfunctional. Extremely." But his arms felt like home, and the firelight felt like hope, and for the first time since this nightmare started, I thought maybe we'd actually survive. We had to, because I'd finally found someone worth surviving for. And tomorrow, we'd find out if dangerous love was stronger than bloodline hate. If you think you know how this ends, you're probably wrong. Hit subscribe so you don't miss the confrontation with my uncle, because what he did next still gives me nightmares. When my uncle walked through that door, I realized the girl who served champagne died the night I whispered that warning. The warehouse in Brooklyn smelled like rust and old concrete. Dante had positioned me in the center of the space, hands zip-tied behind my back to sell the captured story. The wire was taped between my shoulder blades, hidden under my shirt. Orion and his team were in position 3 floors up with Interpol agents. Extraction time. 2 minutes 40 seconds. I just had to stay alive that long. My heart hammered so hard I worried the wire would pick up nothing but my pulse. Every sound made me flinch. Dripping water, distant traffic, the creak of metal settling. I'd memorized my lines, practiced staying calm, told myself I could do this. But theory and reality are very different things. The door opened at exactly 9 p.m. Constantine walked in flanked by 4 armed men, and I saw my mother in his face. Same nose, same cheekbones, same deep-set eyes. But where my mother's eyes held warmth, his held nothing but cold calculation. "Little Emiliana." His accent was thicker than I expected, vowels rounded with Neapolitan inflection. "You look so much like your grandmother. God rest her soul." Don't react. Stay scared but defiant. That's what they'd coached me. "You knew her?" My voice shook, not acting, genuine fear. "Of course. She was my mother too." He circled me slowly, predatory. "Did yours tell you about me? About the brother she pretended didn't exist?" "She said you went down a bad path." He laughed, sharp and bitter. "A bad path. How diplomatic. She didn't mention that the family stole from me?" that they threw me out with nothing while they kept everything? You stole from your father. His hand cracked across my face so fast I didn't see it coming. Pain exploded across my cheek. Blood filled my mouth. Careful, little niece. His voice dropped to a whisper. You don't know the story. You only know their lies. Stay calm. Keep him talking. The wire needs his confession. Then tell me, I said, spitting blood. Tell me your side. That was all the invitation he needed. For the next 10 minutes, he talked about being the oldest son, expected to take over the family business, the legitimate one, an import company. About discovering his father was smuggling contraband, keeping 2 sets of books, lying to everyone including his own wife. About confronting him and being called a liar, a troublemaker, a disgrace. So yes, I took money. Constantine's eyes burned with old rage. Money that was earned through crimes he committed but blamed on me. They disowned me for exposing the truth. Part of me wondered if he actually believed that, if years of paranoia had rewritten history in his mind until he was the victim, the hero, the wronged son instead of the criminal everyone said he was. And the forgery ring? I pushed. The trafficking? How does that honor the truth? It honors survival. He crouched in front of me, gripping my chin. The world is full of people like your grandmother. People who smile and cook and pretend to be good while hiding their rot. I just stopped pretending. She wasn't rotten. She was the best person I ever knew. She stood by while they destroyed me. That makes her complicit. He released my chin and stood. Just like you're complicit now. Working with Salvatici, destroying my operation, betraying your own blood. I didn't know you were my blood when I warned him. But you stayed with him after, chose him over family. Constantine pulled out a gun, black metal that looked too heavy for his aging hands. That kind of betrayal requires consequences. This was it. The moment where everything could go wrong. But I remembered what Orion had said. Paranoid people need to explain. They need you to understand why they're right. You're going to kill your own niece? I kept my voice steady. That makes you just like the family you hate, punishing blood for choices you don't agree with. He froze. The gun wavered slightly. My mother doesn't even know I'm here, I continued. She spent 30 years protecting me from ever knowing your name. She built a whole new life so I'd never be connected to any of this. And you're going to murder me to punish her? For something your father did 40 years ago? Shut up. You want revenge? Fine. But at least be honest about what you are. You're not the wronged son. You're exactly what they said you were. A criminal who uses family pain as an excuse for doing terrible things. The slap came harder this time. I tasted more blood. My vision swam. But I'd hit a nerve. I could see it in how his hands shook, how his jaw clenched. The paranoia was cracking, revealing the wounded child underneath. You don't understand, he said, but his voice was less certain now. You don't know what it's like to be erased, to have your own mother look at you like you're a stranger. You're right. I don't. I met his eyes. But I know what it's like to disappoint family, to feel like you're never good enough. The difference is I didn't start hurting people because of it. For one brief moment, I thought I'd reached him. Thought maybe beneath the decades of crime and paranoia, there was still some part of the brother my mother had loved. Then his expression hardened. Nice try, little niece. But I didn't survive this long by falling for emotional manipulation. He raised the gun, pointed it at my chest. Where were they? Extraction should have happened by now. 2 minutes, 40 seconds had passed. I'd been counting. Any last words? Constantine asked. My mouth went dry. This wasn't the plan. This wasn't. Then I heard it. His phone ringing. He checked the screen and his face went white. No, that's not possible. What? One of his men asked. The wire transfer. Someone's reversing it. All of it. 200 million. He looked at me with sudden understanding. You. This whole thing. You were recording me. Oh, God. How did he know? He grabbed my shirt and found the wire, ripping it free. Where are they? Where's Salvatici? I couldn't answer. Terror had locked my throat. I'll tell you where. Constantine's smile was terrible. Listening to a recording of this conversation I made earlier today. You think I didn't know about the trap? I've known since the beginning? No. No. You see, Interpol's been after me for years, but they're predictable. They always use the same patterns, same tactics. When your boyfriend's people reached out to my loyal contact, I knew immediately it was a setup. He pulled out a second phone and showed me the screen. I've been recording you. Edited it to make it look like you and Salvatici planned the entire auction con together. Like you've been working with him from the start to frame me. My stomach dropped. That's insane. No one will believe, won't they? Art restoration student with gambling debts. Yes, I know about those student loans. Might as well be gambling debts. Gets recruited by mafiaboss to authenticate fake paintings. Except she gets greedy, decides to expose the con and take all the money. Classic double cross. His eyes glittered. I've already sent the evidence to the FBI, Interpol, and several very interested journalists. By morning, you'll be the most wanted woman in New York. Horror washed over me. He'd outplayed us. Completely. And Salvatici? He's upstairs with Interpol agents who think they're about to arrest me. But I'm not there. I'm here, with you. And by the time they realize the location was fake, I'll be in the wind with your corpse as proof of my innocence. Self-defense against the woman who tried to frame me. He pressed the gun against my forehead. Cold metal. Final. Say goodbye to... The gunshot was deafening, but I wasn't dead. Constantine staggered backward, red blooming on his shoulder. His gun clattered to the concrete. His men spun toward the source of the shot. Orion stood in the doorway, gun raised, Dante and 6 others behind him. His face was absolutely murderous. Touch her again, Orion said quietly, and the next one goes between your eyes. Chaos erupted. Constantine's men opened fire. Orion's team returned it. I threw myself sideways, rolling behind a concrete pillar as bullets tore through the space where I'd been sitting. My hands were still zip-tied, but I managed to get my feet under me, pressing flat against the pillar. Emiliana! Orion's voice cut through the gunfire. North exit! Run! But Constantine was between me and the north exit, clutching his bleeding shoulder, his gun retrieved and aimed at me with his offhand. You should have stayed a waitress, he snarled. Time slowed. I saw his finger tighten on the trigger, saw Orion running toward me but too far away to help, saw my life about to end in a Brooklyn warehouse at the hands of my own blood. Then Dante's bullet took Constantine in the leg. He went down hard, gun skittering away. Sirens wailed outside, real ones this time, not Interpol, NYPD responding to reports of gunfire. Orion reached me, cutting the zip ties with a knife, pulling me against him. Are you hurt? God, tell me you're not hurt. I'm okay, but he recorded everything. He has fake evidence that we planned. I know, I heard. He cupped my face, checking the damage from Constantine's slaps. His expression was pure rage. We'll handle it. Right now we need to move. Dante had Constantine secured, face down with hands cuffed behind his back. The wounded man was still ranting about betrayal, about family, about injustice, Still believing his own lies even as blood pooled beneath him, police burst through 3 different doors simultaneously, and I realized with cold clarity that this nightmare wasn't over. It was just beginning. The bullet felt like fire, but his arms felt like home. The next 6 weeks were a different kind of hell. Legal hell, paperwork hell, testimony hell. Constantine survived his wounds and was immediately arrested, but his evidence against me had already spread. News outlets ran stories about the art student turned con artist. My face was on every tabloid. My university suspended me pending investigation. My mother called crying, confused, terrified. I had to tell her everything about Constantine, about the auction, about Orion. She took a flight to New York the next day. The meeting happened in a federal building conference room with lawyers present. My mother walked in looking smaller than I remembered, gray streaking her dark hair, hands twisted with anxiety. Then she saw me, bruised face, exhausted eyes, nothing like the daughter who'd left for school 12 weeks ago. "Mama," I whispered. She crossed the room and pulled me into her arms, holding tight like I was 5 years old again. "I thought I'd lost you." "I'm okay. I'm here." She pulled back, studying my face. "Tell me everything. The truth." So I did. All of it. The warning, the escape, the cabin, Constantine's plan, the warehouse confrontation. I left nothing out, including Orion. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "My brother," she finally said. "I spent 30 years protecting you from him, and he still found you. It's not your fault. I should have told you, should have prepared you." Her voice cracked. "I thought erasing him from our story would keep you safe. Instead, it left you vulnerable." "You couldn't have known." She took my hands. "This man, Orion, he protected you?" "Yes." "And you love him?" The question startled me, but the answer was simple. "Yes." She studied me with that mother wisdom that sees through all lies. "Then I trust your judgment. Bring him to dinner when this is over." Despite everything, the trauma, the fear, the uncertainty, I laughed, because that was so perfectly her. Accept the Mafia boyfriend, offer him pot roast. The legal battle took 4 months. Interpol's forensic team analyzed Constantine's recordings and proved they'd been edited. My original wire recording, recovered from the warehouse, showed the truth. Combined with Dante's evidence of the trafficking operation, the forgery network documentation, and testimony from 6 other victims, the case against Constantine was airtight. He went to prison for 30 years. No parole. The university reinstated me, apologized, offered counseling. I declined the counseling, accepted the reinstatement, and immediately requested a leave of absence, because Orion had kept a promise I'd almost forgotten about. The scholarship to Florence, advanced art restoration training at a prestigious institute, fully funded, starting in January. "You don't have to go," he said the night I got the acceptance letter. We were in his apartment, the first time I'd been there, surprisingly tasteful with actual art on the walls. "After everything that happened, if you want to stay close to home." "Are you trying to get rid of me?" I challenged. "God, no. I'm trying to give you an out, a chance to build the life you wanted before I complicated everything." I moved closer, wrapping my arms around his waist. "What if I want the complicated life, with you?" "Then you'd be crazy." "Probably. But I've had 6 months to think about it. 6 months of legal battles and therapy and figuring out who I am after everything changed." I looked up at him, and I keep coming back to the same answer. I don't want safe. I don't want simple. I want you. His hands came up to frame my face, gentle, reverent, like I was something precious. You deserve so much better than a man trying to leave a criminal empire. You keep saying that, I keep disagreeing. Emiliana, let me go to Florence, I interrupted. Do the program, finish my training, and if after 6 months away I still feel the same way, I paused. Then you stop trying to protect me from yourself and let me make my own choices. He searched my face for a long moment. And if you don't feel the same after 6 months, then at least we'll know. But I don't think that's going to happen. You're very sure of yourself. I'm very sure of us. He kissed me then, soft and deep and full of everything we'd survived together. When we broke apart, his forehead rested against mine. 6 months, he agreed quietly. Then we'll see. Florence was incredible. I threw myself into restoration work with a passion I'd never felt before. Cleaned frescoes in centuries-old churches, repaired Renaissance paintings damaged by time and humidity, learned techniques passed down through generations of Italian masters. But every night, I called Orion, told him about my day, listened to his progress getting out of his father's business, watched him transform from crime boss to legitimate businessman with the same focus he brought to everything else. I'm buying a gallery, he told me one night in March, in Manhattan. Specialized authentication and restoration services. I thought, he paused. I thought maybe you'd want to run it when you come back. My heart squeezed. You're building me a job? I'm building us a legitimate future, if you want it. I want it. I want you. I've wanted that since the cabin. Even knowing everything you know about me, especially knowing everything. I smiled at my phone screen. You're not your past, Orion. You're who you choose to become. When did you get so wise? When I fell in love with a mafia boss who makes biscotti and plays Chopin. His laugh was warm through the phone. 6 months is too long. 4 more weeks. I can make it if you can. Barely. Those 4 weeks crawled by. But finally, my program ended. I packed my bags, said goodbye to Florence, and boarded a flight back to New York. Orion was waiting at arrivals with flowers, peonies, my favorite, though I'd never told him that. He just knew. Hi, I said stupidly, suddenly nervous. Hi yourself. He pulled me into his arms, and it felt like exhaling after holding my breath for months. Welcome home. It's good to be home. We stayed like that for a long moment, travelers flowing around us like water around stone. Then he pulled back slightly, reaching into his jacket pocket. I was going to wait, he said. Do this properly. Take you to dinner, get down on one knee, make a whole thing of it. My heart stopped. Orion, but I've spent 6 months without you, and I'm done waiting. He opened a small velvet box. Inside was a ring, vintage, Art Deco, a deep red stone surrounded by small diamonds. It was my grandmother's, Neapolitan, like yours. I had it sized for you 3 months ago because I've known since the warehouse that I wanted forever. Tears blurred my vision. That's not very romantic proposal timing. No, but it's honest. He met my eyes. You saved my life the night you whispered about fake pigments. You saved my soul every day after. I don't care if we make sense on paper. I don't care if people think you're too good for me. They're right, but I'm too selfish to care. I just care about you, about us, about building something real. Yes. The word came out choked with emotion. Yes, absolutely yes. He slid the ring onto my finger, perfect fit, and kissed me while airport crowds applauded, and my entire future rearranged itself into something beautiful. 6 months later, we opened Conti Restoration Gallery. My name over the door. Our dream made real. My mother came to the opening, met Orion officially, approved of him immediately when he asked her for Italian recipe tips. Constantine remained in prison. My mother visited him once, came home, and never spoke of it again. Some betrayals run too deep for forgiveness. But we built something different, something honest. They say the most dangerous thing you can do is fall in love with someone who sees the real you. But I learned it's also the most beautiful thing. Because when someone sees your shadows and your light and loves you anyway, that's not dangerous. That's home. I never thought telling a stranger his painting was fake would change my entire life. But the best masterpieces are the ones you never see coming. And ours? It was just beginning. So here's what I want to know. Do you believe people can actually change? Like really change, not just say they will? Because Orion went from running a criminal empire to opening an art gallery, and some people still don't believe he's legitimate. What do you think? Can someone leave their past behind, or does it always catch up? Drop your thoughts below. If you enjoy stories like this, take a moment to subscribe to the channel. That's how I'll know you truly liked it. Even if you're watching on your TV, grab a second to join this family of fans who love emotional and heartfelt stories. Your support means everything, and it helps us bring you even more tales like this.